Welcome to the Daily Tanya. Today is Wednesday, the 15th day of Elul. Today is a special day. It is the day that the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, established the yeshiva of Taimchit Mimim in Lubavitch, the town of Lubavitch. The Rebbe explained that this day is a very, very special, happy day. The fact that we see today there's Hasidim, the Shluchim around the world, preparing the world for Mashiach. It is because of this day of establishing this yeshiva of the Taimchet Mimim of Lubavitch and spreading the teaching, spreading the Hasidus around the world. And that's what we're doing, learning the daily Tanya. And again, a reminder about the 3 chapters of Tehillim today is 43, 44, and 45. And let's begin with tzedakah. Gedola tzedakah shemekareves esageula. Tzedakah brings Mashiach closer. So we started yesterday, chapter 15. And the Alter Rebbe in this chapter is going to explain to us the attributes, the godly attributes. We should understand something of the system, the way it works in the spiritual world and in this world. So yesterday we learned that it is possible to understand by understanding ourselves because God created us in His image. Umi besori echaze eloika. I can see God from seeing myself, from understanding the way the human system works. We can understand somewhat of the godly attributes. There's parallels. We have emotional and intellectual attributes. There is a parallel thing also in the spiritual world, those emotional and intellectual attributes. However, today the Alter Rebbe makes a disclaimer in explaining that we shouldn't think that because we figure out how we work, that can figure out the same things up there. Although we have similar concepts and attributes, intellectual attributes, emotive attributes, the kindness and severity and all kind of things, the way the Alter Rebbe is going to explain. But nevertheless, the distance is so vast and not even in comparison. We cannot compare them at all. And Alter Rebbe brings an example of Avraham Avinu. Now, Avraham Avinu, our father Abraham, if we were thinking about a human being that is godly, that his attributes are godly, this is Avraham Avinu. His attributes, our sages tell us, he was like a merkava, like a chariot to Hashem. So his love was, his attributes of kindness, was nothing for himself at all. No selfishness, no selfless. That he was completely selfless, completely devoted to Hashem. Just like a chariot does not have its own desire. A chariot just follows the way the rider wants to takes it. Doesn't have its own desire. So was Avram Avinu. Avram was he was the embodiment of the attribute of chesed, of kindness, to the point that the chesed of Atzilus, the higher spiritual kindness, said to Hashem, you have Avram in this world, why do you need me? So one would think, says the Alter Rebbe, that this, if we want to compare some godly attributes to ours, look at Avram, we can find a comparison. And Abraham made a statement and he said, no, I am but dust and ashes. What does that mean? I am but dust and ashes. This is what Avram said when he was talking to Hashem, beseeching on behalf of the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. It says, I am but dust and ashes. Not just saying of how humble he felt, but it meant something. So the Alter Rebbe brings a teaching from his teacher, the Mezritcher Maggid, that it says that what Avram said was that if we would compare dust and ashes to a tree has it's made like everything in the world is made out of 4 elements, which is the fire, the water, the wind, the air, and the earth. If you take a tree and then you burn the tree, and what remains? The ashes. The ashes are the essence of the tree. So the elements of fire, water, and air was separated, was gone, passed on from the tree. But the ashes is the element of the earth, and that remains. So in essence, you have it there. You have the essence of the tree there. But now if you're going to compare, and you look at a tree with a beautiful tree, and you look at the ashes, can you say that this is the same thing? Obviously not. There's no comparison whatsoever. And that's what Avram says. My kindness, compared to the spiritual kindness of above, of the higher worlds, it is like comparing the ashes to the tree. So this is what the Alter Rebbe gives us an understanding before he explains the godly attributes. We should understand that yes, God created us in us these attributes, but they have some kind of comparison, but really they're completely different in a different category altogether. So that we should take this with caution as we learn those things. So let's see in the Alter Rebbe's teachings today. Says the Alter Rebbe, Ach tzorich la'agdim asher shomaiti mimiri olav hasholem al posuk v'onechi ofar v'efer. However, it is necessary to state first what I heard from my teacher, from my master, Alter Rebbe's master, Rabbi Dov Ber, the Maggid of Mezrich, which is this is one of the few times the Alter Rebbe actually mentions a clear thing that he heard directly from him. Peace be to him. So what he explained on the verse, and I am dust and ashes. Shomer Avram Avinu olav hasholem ala oras nishmoso yameiro begufo me'oyer chesed elyon. Our father Abraham, peace be to him, he said this of the illumination from his soul, which radiated in his body from the light of the supreme chesed. Now again, he's talking about the level of the godly soul that radiates in the body. Because there is the light of the soul that does not radiate in the body, and that part of the neshama is really even higher than the spiritual levels. But we're talking about the levels of the light that radiates in the body. And that comes, Avram Avinu's chesed comes from chesed elyon, from the supreme chesed, supreme kindness. Vehi midosei midas ahava rabbah. And that is his attribute, the attribute of ahava rabbah, magnanimous love, that derives from the parent sephira called chesed of Atzilus. שבו שהיה אויב הקדוש ברוך הוא אהבה גדולה ועליונה כל כך עד שנעשה מקרוב לקדוש ברוך הוא. For he loved, an alternative reading says with which he loved the Holy One, blessed be he, with a love so great and sublime that he became a chariot unto the Holy One, blessed be he. As we explained before, a chariot that he has love. Normally when you have love, you love something. It is you who love something. It is something that you want to get. Ahava Rabbah that Avram had was such a love that he did not take place, was not playing a role at all. It was only about what Hashem wants. He became like a chariot to Hashem. He had no will whatsoever. So knowing that this is the level of love of Avram Avinu, one would think that perhaps that can be compared to the spiritual love of the world of Atzilus, the spiritual chesed. Although, yes, it is vastly greater in quantity, in levels much, much greater than his, but yet it is still in the same category. That one would think that. And that's what Alter Rebbe first says, what we might think, and then he says what Avraham Avinu negated and says that it is not so. So that's what he said, V'sal kedai tochamina, שבחינס חסד ואהבה שלמעלה בספירס העליונס היא מעין וסוג מאוס מידס האהבה רבה של אברהם אבינו עליו השלום. Now one might possibly assume that the type of chesed and love as it exists above in the supernal spheres is of a similar nature of the attribute of abundant love exemplified by our father Abraham, peace be to him. Though surpassing it infinitely. So one might think it is still the same category, although it is much greater, in a greater level. Why? Because the higher levels of attributes have no limits. And that's why we would think that it's in the same category, except it is much without limits. For it is known of the supernal midas, the attributes, that though their mode of emanation is finite, meaning they're finite in a sense that the attribute of chesed is not gevura, and gevura is not chesed, although they're combined from each other, but chesed is chesed and gevura is gevura. But they themselves are essentially without end or limit. The chesed is endless chesed, and the gevura is endless gevura. And why is that? Because in those godly attributes there is the light of Hashem himself. It is one with his attributes, with his vessels, so to speak. Ki oirein soiv baruch hu meir umelubash b'seicha mamash ve'iyu v'gamo ichad. Because the infinite Ein Sof light actually radiates and is vested within them, and he and his midas, meaning the kelim of the sephiros, are one. Just as he is infinite, so are they. As regard the soul of man, however, which is vested in corporality in man's body, its attributes are finite and limited, so that one might assume that the category of the attributes are similar to the category up there, the kind, the quality, although in quantity it is vastly different. Nevertheless, one might possibly assume that its attributes are of the same type as the supernal attributes. This is where Avraham comes and says, absolutely not. And not even to be compared at all to the spiritual attributes. And that is why he said, I am but dust and ashes. This is why he said, I am dust and ashes. That is, like ashes, which are the essence and the substance of the burned wood, as we explained before. For the wood was previously composed of the four basic elements, fire, air, water, and earth, of which all matter is compounded. Now when you burn it, the three elements go. And the three elements of fire, water, and air passed away. V'kolu be'oshana mis'ave me'akavosan kanoida. And they were consumed in the smoke that came into being through their combination as is known. And what was left? What was left is the element of earth. As to the fourth element of the wood, namely its component of earth, which goes downward and does not ascend with the smoke, and over which the fire has no dominion, it is this that remains in existence and constitutes the ashes. Now, says the Alter Rebbe, the wood, the tree, before burning it, it has its width, has its color, has its shape, it has its character. The main thing was still also ashes. That was still the earth, the element of earth. The tree has the main element of the tree is the earth. That's what Alter Rebbe says. V'inei kol me'us ha'etzem ha'moshe b'chumra v'tzuros b'oirich v'roicha v'oivi shoyanir la'ayin kodim shenisraf ikoroi oyam esayda ofa shabai. Now the whole of the essence of the wood, with its tangible substantiality, which does not result from the fire, water, and air within it, its matter and its form in terms of length, width, and density, which were visible to the eyes before it was burned, derive basically from the element of earth within it. Yes, it had the other elements also included, except that the fire, water, and air were also compounded in it. Because the earth is the most material of them all, of all of the elements, having the dimensions of length and width and density, which is not the case in fire and air. It doesn't have this dimensions of length and width and density. And even water that does contain these dimensions appears only sparingly in wood. Element of water is not a stationary thing that has these dimensions in a regular stationary sense. So the bottom line is that the wood, even before it was burned, when it's still a beautiful tree, is still the core of it comes from the earth. Thus, as to all the dimensions in wood, of length, width, and density, all is of the earth, element of earth, and all return to earth. Meaning, to the ashes that remains after fire, water and air have been separated from it. So now concludes the Alter Rebbe, and just like you cannot compare the ashes that remains after you burn the wood compared to the beautiful tree, to the contents of the character of the tree. When you see the ashes, say, here is a tree. No, it's ashes. Meaning, now just as there is neither a quantitative nor a qualitative resemblance or proportion between on one end the ashes and on the other end the essence of the tree, which before being burned had sizable dimensions of length, width, and density. Even though it is the very essence and substance, and from the wood, it did come into being. The ashes came into being from the wood. Nevertheless, it's not. You cannot compare it. Just like another example you take. For example, you have an expensive watch, $50,000 watch, and you take it and you grind it into dust. Everything. You have a machine that grinds everything into dust, and you have a cup full of dust now. You have all the elements that a watch has. Can you compare? Say this is a watch. I have over there I have the silver, I have the gold, the crystals, whatever it is. It's all there, but it's not a watch. It is the quality, the essence of the watch, of the material, the matter of the watch, but that's not a watch. Here says Avram Avinu, and his level of chesed compared to the chesed of Hashem, chesed of Atzilus, it is like comparing the dust, the ashes to the tree. And Alter Rebbe says the distance between Avram's emotive attributes and godly emotive attributes is really much more than the distance between ashes and a tree, except that in our world we cannot find a better example. He's just using an example that we can find. That's what Alter Rebbe says now. כך על דרך משה אמר אברהם אבינו עליו השלום על מידוסי מידת החסד ואהבה מאירו בוים לבשס בגופי. Precisely so, metaphorically speaking, did our father Abraham, peace be to him, speak of his distinctive attribute, the attribute of kindness and love, which radiated within him and was vested in his body. For though it was this very attribute of the love on the supreme chesed of Atzilus that radiated in his soul, which was a chariot to the will of heaven. Nevertheless, that chesed of Atzilus, until it came down to the body of Avraham, it went down and was filtered. Afal became nevertheless, as it descended downward to vest itself in the body, by means of the evolution of the worlds from one level to another, by means of many contractions. There was no semblance or proportion between the essence of the light of the love that radiated within him and the essence of the light of the love and supreme chesed of Atzilus, the higher world. The only comparison he found is like the ashes to the tree. Except of the sort of proportion and semblance that exists, metaphorically speaking, between the essence of the element of earth, which became ashes, and its essence and quality in its original state as a tree, pleasant to the sight and good for food. Says the Alter Rebbe that really that example also doesn't make justice, because the difference is even much more than that. Indeed, the incomparability of Avram's chesed and the chesed of Atzilus exceed the incomparability of the ash and the tree by thousands of degrees of separation. Nevertheless, the Torah speaks in human phraseology by way of allegory and metaphor. Hence, its use of an analogy of a tree, despite its inherent disproportion. So that's what the Alter Rebbe gives us this introduction, to which we can then understand and learn that this is how much more so when it comes to our closeness to Hashem. So on the one end, the Alter Rebbe tells us, yes, we can do it, we can understand it, we can understand godly attributes, and we will study it in this chapter. But in the same time, we have to keep in mind that the distance is very, very much. That's the end of today's shir. We'll see you, Mr. Shem, tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.